What's up guys, how's it going, and welcome to the Mina channel. Today we're gonna be discussing Persona clones. What is and what isn't a Persona clone really? And one of the things that I want to say about is, I'm sure you've seen this thumbnail before. This is from a previous video that I did about a year or two ago pertaining to Persona clones in some games, and I asked in that video about some people just kind of dropping in the comments like some names of some other games that they thought that were clones for Persona games. And one thing that I just want to straight up say is, not every game, just because it's cool RPG with social aspects to it, means that it's necessarily a clone of Persona. There are some games that really just have a lot of aspects of the Persona series, but at the same time, not everything that Persona has utilized is something of their own. Like the social simulators, as you can say it, the school simulator type thing it's already been a thing before Persona. Like, it's been used in a lot of other things. Dating sims use them a lot, and just kind of implementing that into the RPG genre, like, sure, it's a really good idea, and I'm sure like Persona is the more well known for, but at the same time they didn't create a genre, they just popularized it. And I feel like that's what happens with a lot of games nowadays, with what people believe, just kind of say, oh, this is a Persona clone, versus no, this is just a game that has RPG elements, school elements, and a social interaction elements. You know, like there's definitely a significant aspect of it. Now, on the other hand, there are blatant ripoffs of what I will call Persona clones. Like there are definitely some games out there that you see them and you're like, yeah, this game is definitely trying to aim for the same market as the Persona series. They're really trying to use the same space or use the same elements, or some of them are blatant enough to like actually even copy like the style of Persona. For example, Persona Arena, there was a game a while ago, it's like a phone game, and they stole like the design and the style of Persona. There were other like that, like for Persona 4 and for Persona 5. So it's not, there's like a lot of different elements that you can say, yeah, these elements were definitely ripped off from Persona. But at the same time, I feel like nowadays people use Persona clone as kind of like everything that is almost like anything that isn't RPG is like a Persona clone. I feel, and that's how I really started this video. It's like I looked up online on Google, and I'm just kind of like, okay, Persona clones, and like I want to see what people have for Persona clones. This video was supposed to be a follow-up video from back then. It's kind of like, oh, you know, what other games are coming out right now that we can kind of pinpoint and say, oh, these are definitely Persona clones. But the more I read into the list, the more I was like, no, these are just games. These are just games that people think they are Persona clone games because they have Persona elements on them, or because they have elements of school and RPGs and that kind of stuff. For example, there's a game called Tokyo Xanadu EX Plus, which is a game that came out on the PS4, and I believe was on the PS Vita as well. So this game is not a Persona clone. Like, it's there is elements of like social simulator, like you go around the town and you work and you hang out with people and you have like these social events that you have and everything like that. And on the other hand, you also do dungeon crawling. And the story, honestly, like at first I went with the idea of like, okay, this is a Persona clone. People have been telling me this is a Persona clone, but the more I played this game, the more I realized, wait, this isn't actually a Persona clone. Some people just believe that it is. Therefore, the label kind of stuck to it. Like, this game is definitely not made with Persona in mind. Like, I don't believe that it really was. Like, sure, there are some elements, like the social elements aspect. You're like, oh, wait a minute, this kind of looks like Persona or whatever. But at the end of the day, like, there's so many other elements that don't really like fit on the Persona genre. Like, this one is like a hack and slash type RPG. You know, it's like it's fast moving, and the dungeon crawling is really specific to this particular game. It does remind me of some other anime, but it doesn't really remind me of Persona. Like, I played it with the mentality of kind of thinking of Persona, but at the end of the day, I end up realizing that this is not a Persona game, or it's not really trying to be a Persona game. And I feel like that's where Persona clones can be really good for what I would say, like, for the development of more Persona games, because the more Persona clones come out, and they come out with good quality and with new aspects, new facets of storytelling, of new facets of social simulator, which really does improve upon what Persona did. I feel like that's already a better game in some aspects, like Persona. For example, I recently last year played Like a Dragon, Yakuza Like a Dragon, and that game added a really interesting aspect, which was the drinking links. Basically, is you're at a bar hanging out with some of the people that are in your party and everything, and you're drinking, and through the experience of like drinking and socializing with them, you cannot trigger an event where you have this like little story moment and everything. And now I noticed that I said the trigger an event. That's very much a thing that happens in a lot of social simulators or like dating sims and everything. That's really like Persona didn't create that particular facet of the industry or anything like that. There's very much been a staple of it. So seeing the success of Persona using the dating sim or like the social sim aspect of it really inspired more other companies to actually do it. But they do it very different. Like in Yakuza, it's really different. And it actually does make sense within like the Japanese society. Like Japanese really like the drinking aspect because of the social aspect. Like that's the moment when you go with your boss or with your co-workers or with your classmates, you have a few beers and you really kind of just be yourself and talk about experiences and socialize really. So the drinking and the socializing kind of go back to back together in that environment. So personally, when I saw that, and the actual stories and development of it is actually really good. Like, besides the names, drinking links, there is really nothing on the Persona side of things. Sure, this is also turn-based RPG, but again, Persona didn't create the turn-based RPG. There's been turn-based RPGs since the development of RPGs. The very few first RPGs were turn-based RPGs. That's pretty much what we had back in the day. So, really interesting to think about all the different facets of like what people consider a Persona clone and what it isn't really a Persona clone, right? There's some, like I said, there are really blatant copies of them. Like I do have in my thumbnail here another game that I felt disgruntled about originally, and that's gonna be Caligula Effect. If you haven't played Caligula Effect, it is made by the guy that created Persona 1 and 2, at least the writer and some of the team, and that game definitely tried to aim at the same market as Persona. However, they did things very differently. Like, I don't want to say that this game particularly failed, but it probably did in some aspects. But in the aspects, there is a lot of like those same qualities that they tried to use from Persona, like such as the dating sim. This happens at a school. You know, the main protagonist is a transfer student, and they're like awaken this inner self ability. It's a lot of Persona-esque aspect to this game, which you can like when you really pair them up with their previous work that they did in Persona 1 and 2, it really does kind of reflect that. On the other hand, there is this new game, which is a game that is coming pretty soon eventually, and that's Monarch. Monarch is made by the creators of Persona, I'm sorry, not Persona, but Shin Megami Tensei, Mega 10, Shin Megami Tensei If, and this game is really trying to kind of like base themselves on like the idea of Shin Megami Tensei If. Now, if you guys didn't know about Shin Megami Tensei If, Shin Megami Tensei If is a spin-off of the Shin Megami Tensei series that kind of brought in the school aspect into the series, and that's actually what inspired them to create the Persona series later on in the line. So that game actually has a lot of relevance for like Persona in general. Now, this game, from what I've seen so far, it doesn't really seem like there is actually anything aiming at the Persona series other than maybe having like this school element. But again, there's enough RPGs out there, there's enough JRPGs out there that have a school setting. You're kind of like, yeah, you know, like they don't really own the school setting. They never really own the school setting. You know, there's like way too many RPGs where you're playing as high school students in like a high school setting and everything. So to me, that's like no longer enough to like think, oh, this is definitely a clone of like that. To me, that doesn't really like make a difference. Like you're like, yeah, it is, but it isn't. Like it doesn't really like touching off on that aspect that you're thinking that it is or it isn't. It's just kind of one of those things where you see it and you're kind of like, oh, like Persona, but is it really like Persona, or do you think that it's like Persona? And that's kind of like where I want to kind of note here. There are some things that you see, you're like, yeah, this is using Persona assets. For example, Codename X is a mobile game RPG inspired by Persona. At least that's what I say. But when you go into watching the trailer, you actually see like elements of Persona series in this game, like literally like assets and everything. And then you do some research and you realize that Atlas is selling the assets to this company to make a mobile game inspired by Persona. So there's definitely some elements between like Persona clones and elements of inspired by. I feel like there's nothing wrong with inspiring series. For example, there's a good thing that I've seen a while ago, and that is the Dark Souls series. The Dark Souls series have inspired, if you want to say, a lot of games to be like Dark Souls. In fact, you've seen this a lot, like, right? There's like the Souls-like style of genre of games nowadays and everything. Not necessarily that they are stealing a lot of the aspects of what makes a Dark Souls game, but you also see them really kind of borrowing a lot of elements from that. But there are some times when they use elements from a lot of different games and they create something new and something different, and I feel like that's when it's fine, when it's just like you're taking an inspiration, you're borrowing a mechanic that works really well and utilizing it in your game, and that works well. But when you see a game that performs mediocre and it's just like an asset flip, and you see it and you just can't see that there's like no effort or no like they didn't really try hard to make this game, and you're kind of like, yeah, this is just a clone, this is just a rip-off of the actual game. So I feel like that's where it kind of lies in the difference between a Persona clone and just a inspiration for other games and everything like that. Nowadays, you see like this game is giving me Persona vibes or something like that. It's obviously just a joke versus really thinking that a game is actually like stealing the idea of like Shibuya on Persona or something like that. I don't know, there's like the people are funny sometimes. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this, guys. If you're new, please consider liking and subscribing. Let me know in the comments below what you think about all this. Do you believe a lot of these games are clones? Do you know that some of these games are not actually clones, but people believe they are? Let me know in the comments below. If you're new, please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you guys later. Bye bye.